The cruel paradox of avoidance psychology is that the people they love most deeply become the targets of their most intense resentment and hatred. This isn't random cruelty or confusion about their feelings. It's a systematic psychological response where love itself becomes the trigger for defensive hatred. The depth of their love directly correlates to the intensity of their hate, creating a toxic dynamic where caring deeply transforms into emotional warfare against the very person who awakened their capacity for connection. Reason 1. You make them feel things they can't control. Avoidants hate the people they love because these relationships force them to experience emotional intensity that completely overwhelms their carefully maintained psychological control systems. When they love someone deeply, their nervous system becomes hijacked by feelings they can't regulate, predict, or manage through their usual defensive strategies. This loss of emotional control feels like psychological torture to someone whose entire identity is built around being unaffected by others and maintaining independence from emotional influence. Your love awakens their attachment system in ways that create constant internal chaos, anxiety, and vulnerability they can't escape through their typical avoidance mechanisms. The hatred emerges as their minds attempt to restore control by rejecting the source of their emotional overwhelm. They hate you not because you've done anything wrong, but because loving you has made them feel powerless over their own emotional responses in ways that threaten their core sense of safety and identity. This emotional overwhelm includes experiencing unprecedented anxiety about your well-being, obsessive thoughts about your feelings toward them, and desperate need for your approval that contradicts everything they believe about their independence. They hate you for making them need something they can't control. The intensity of their hatred directly reflects the intensity of their love. They wouldn't hate you this much if you didn't matter this much. But mattering this much feels like psychological danger that triggers their defensive system to reject what they most want to protect themselves from what they most need. Reason 2. You represent everything they reject about themselves. Avoidants hate the people they love because these individuals embody all the emotional qualities they've rejected in themselves: vulnerability, neediness, emotional expression, and capacity for deep connection. Loving you forces them to confront the parts of themselves they've spent their lives denying and suppressing. You represent their own rejected emotional nature reflected back to them through another person. When they see your ability to love freely, express feelings openly, and meet others naturally, they're confronted with their own capacity for these experiences that they've branded as weaknesses or dangers to be avoided. This projection creates hatred because you're a living reminder of who they could be if they weren't so defended. But becoming like you would require abandoning every protective mechanism they've relied on for psychological survival. They hate you for showing them their own potential that feels too terrifying to embrace. The hatred includes resentment that you can do what they can't, love without fear, trust without suspicion, and connect without losing yourself. Your emotional freedom highlights their emotional imprisonment, creating fury about their own limitations that gets directed toward you as the source of this painful awareness. They hate you for making emotional expression look easy when it feels impossible to them, for demonstrating that vulnerability can be safe when it feels dangerous to them, and for proving that love can be simple when it feels overwhelmingly complex to their damaged psychology. Your natural emotional capacity makes them feel defective by comparison, triggering shame about their own emotional poverty that transforms into hatred toward you for highlighting their inadequacy. They hate you for being effortlessly what they struggle to become despite years of trying. The deepest hatred comes from recognizing that you represent who they could have been if they hadn't been wounded so early and so deeply. You show them their unlived potential, which feels both inspiring and devastating, because claiming that potential would require facing all the pain they've been avoiding through their defensive patterns. This hatred is actually self-hatred projected onto you, because it's easier to hate someone else for having what they lack than to feel compassion for themselves for losing what was taken from them through childhood, trauma, and neglect. The hatred that proves love. The cruelest irony is that their hatred toward you serves as proof of how much you actually mean to them. They only hate people who have the power to affect them deeply, and their intense negative feelings toward you reveal the equally intense positive feelings that exist underneath their defensive responses. This hatred represents their psyche's attempt to protect them from the vulnerability that loving you creates. But it also proves that you've penetrated their defenses so completely that you've become essential to their emotional world in ways they can't tolerate or control. Avoidants hate the ones they love because love makes them feel everything they've spent their lives avoiding: emotional dependency, vulnerability, loss of control, and confrontation with their own rejected capacity for deep feeling. Their hatred is their defense against the very love that could heal them, creating the tragic dynamic where they destroy what they most need to protect themselves from what they most want.